Living in China, I was taken aback at how often the Chinese people would mention the British Empire to me. It was a very different reaction to the reaction I had experienced in Taiwan.
How many groups of grandmas can you see?
The old empire seemed to be a very important part of how the Chinese view Britain and Brits. I later found out that Xi Jinping had been mentioning Britain's empire and the Opium Wars in his speeches to drum up animosity for the West and further his own narrative while facilitating Xi's imperialist policies.
从近代以来，中华民族命运休戚与共。1840年，鸦片战争之后，西方列强入侵，中国陷入内忧外患、山河破碎的悲惨境地。台湾更是被外族侵占长达半个世纪。为战胜外来侵略，争取民族解放，实现国家统一，中华儿女前赴后继，进行了可歌可泣的斗争。
A couple of days after the Twin Towers came down, I read an opinion article in the Boston Metro that made the bold prediction that the biggest event of our lifetimes would be the fall of the West and the rise of China. The year was 2001 and I was an art student at a university in Boston. At the time, it was pretty much impossible to imagine what this new world order would look like. This stuck in my mind nonetheless. Later that year, I started writing down Chinese words in my sketchbook that my Taiwanese classmates taught me.
在这本书里，你可以看到一个乱七八糟、一个底层社会的小人物在历史的舞台上拼命表演的美国。
The thing with empires is, you either have your own, or you are to a greater or lesser extent part of someone else's. Throughout history, you have to be a very powerful and rich country to be able to exist independent of influence from larger, more powerful and richer neighbours. A good reason to leave the West for Asia is so that you can come back. When you have come back, you see your home with new eyes. The people will see you differently too. Coming back home is not the same as never leaving. Growing up, we knew the British Empire had ended with the handing back of Hong Kong by Margaret Thatcher in 1997. At the time, I was just a teenager. It really meant nothing to me. Hong Kong was of absolutely no relevance to my life. Hong Kong might as well have been on another planet, in another universe.
We have the utmost confidence in the abilities and resilience of the Hong Kong people. Britain learnt long ago that Hong Kong people know best what is good for Hong Kong.
It wasn't until far later in my life that I realised the importance of this event. The year of 1997 was indeed a profound shifting of the sands. Arriving back in the UK after all this time in Asia is like travelling home in a time machine. Everything is the same but different, familiar yet foreign, new yet old. These last 10 months in the UK have been like searching through the rubble of a plane crash, looking for the black box, hoping to find a recording made in desperation, calling for help when it became apparent the plane was going down. In that fateful year of 1997, something else fantastic happened. Tony Blair and the Labour Party won the election with an amazing victory over the Conservatives, and their slogan was, "Things can only get better." Nothing could have been further from the truth. Tony Blair and his government of economic geniuses made a lot of radical changes to Britain that resulted in a lot of unintended consequences. Between 1999 and 2002, the Treasury sold 401 tonnes of gold out of its 715-tonne holding at an average price of $275 an ounce. It was the bottom of gold's 2-decade downward market. The price of gold, as I write this, is $1,600 an ounce. Short-term solutions to long-term problems. This was also the beginning of a new mass immigration program which saw 200,000 people a year immigrate to the UK. 5 times that of previous governments. This was the beginning of the new Britain we see today. The face of Britain literally changed. A lot of profoundly irresponsible policies that made people happy at the time and gave a short-term boost to the economy, while saddling us with debt, leaving us with fractures in our society. Looking back, it is clear that China was making long-lasting decisions that would affect the fiscal prosperity of China as far as 50 to 100 years into the future. The Chinese had let go of government-controlled markets and embraced the free market. This was diametrically opposed to the trend of fiscal management of the British government. The Chinese today are not completely transparent about how much gold they have, but people have speculated that it is possible China's gold reserves now eclipse that of the US. He who has the gold makes the rules. I suppose I always thought the story of the British Empire ended with Hong Kong, and that Britain would, for the rest of my lifetime, be a relatively stable, relatively wealthy country, in which no great political upheaval or bloody revolution would ever take place. As far as I was concerned, the main problem with England is that nothing much was happening. There just wasn't much life in it. Low or stagnant economic growth, widespread disregard for the law, high levels of homelessness, economic dependence on other countries, ballooning debts, social unrest and riots. These were all things that I had associated with the Third World.
这是一辈子的意思。
对，在中国是这样的，在中国是这样的。
哦，一生一世。
还有520是5是我，2是爱，0是你的意思。
就是520。
对对对对对。
520。074。
你去死啊！
Something I will never forget about China is a visit I made to a town in Hunan province. I attended a wedding there. The people of this small town were very friendly and welcoming. The house in which I stayed. It was huge with a spiral staircase in the middle. This was typical of this small town. The residents of this town were either very young or very old. The family had recently had it built. Only a couple of people lived there, and the rooms were all empty. The children of that family worked in China's huge first-tier cities and sent money back to pay for it. I asked why they had not furnished any of the rooms, and the grandmother replied to me with an answer that took my breath away. Leave it to future generations. They can furnish it however they want. I thought back to all the people in England who bought everything on credit or remortgaged their houses to fund their holidays in their old age, leaving nothing to their children. We sat on wooden stools and ate mushrooms and sweet corn cooked on a gas stove, rather like an indoor camping barbecue style setup. I thought to myself, now that's what I call playing the long game. This reminded me of my grandma and grandpa's generation and their attitude towards saving and planning for the future. They lived their lives frugally and hoped their children would have a wonderful life. My grandma would cut up old clothes and use the fabric for cloth to clean with. They were highly suspicious of luxury and wasteful spending. I had nothing but admiration for the people of that town in Hunan, and also for my grandparents' generation in Britain. But somewhere inside them they realised they were connected to the past, and that their actions today would have a lasting effect on the future.
Yeah. Okay.
If one lives beyond their means today, then by definition they must live below their means in the future. Britain today is carrying on as if the next generation will take care of the debt. That connection to the past is viewed in a highly cynical and hateful way. I'll finish this with an idiom. 富不过三代. It means wealth never makes it past 3 generations. The older I get, the more I realise how true this is. All the hard work, wisdom and planning made by people in the modern day may be just as efficiently squandered and undone by the 2nd and 3rd generation. The Opium Wars took place between 1839 and 1860. Most people in Britain today don't know this, and therefore it should be no surprise that they have not asked themselves what is going to happen when the pendulum swings the other way and we become part of the Chinese Empire. Thank you so much for watching this far. If you'd like to buy my stickers for Line, they're here. And thank you very much to everybody who supported me on Patreon and PayPal. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Peace.